A few years back, I watched something I'll never forget. A cold morning, outdoor range, half the class running pistols that looked impressive in the gun shop. By the first hour, I'd counted 6 malfunctions: frozen slides, weak extracts, sloppy reloads. Guys were shaking their heads, blaming the ammo, blaming the cold, blaming everything under the sun, except for the gun. But one shooter, a quiet older guy, just kept shooting. Same rhythm, same pace. His pistol never stuttered once. At the end of the day, he holstered it like it was nothing. So I asked him what he was running, and he just smiled and said, "One that doesn't quit." That stuck with me. And heading into 2026, with more pistols chasing trends than endurance, it mattered even more. Because reliability isn't about looks, trends, or even price. It's about a pistol that keeps firing when everything else starts making excuses. So today, we're counting down the 9mm handguns that earned that level of respect. The ones that didn't flinch, choke, or stall. And number 2, that gun's consistency shocked even me. I've spent enough times around the HK USP to know it doesn't earn trust quickly, it earns it slowly over the years. I've personally seen these pistols push through thousands of rounds, often across training days, mixed ammo, and stretches where cleaning wasn't a priority. And the pattern was always the same. When something went wrong, it usually wasn't the USP. I've watched them chew through cheap range ammo, duty loads, and everything in between, running well past the point where weaker designs start showing fatigue. Even when early hiccups appeared, they were almost always traced back to bad ammunition, not the gun. And once that was out of the equation, the USP just kept cycling. What stands out to me personally isn't performance, it's endurance. This pistol has lived through decades of institutional use and high round counts, and that kind of exposure has a way of exposing flaws fast. The USP never gave people much to complain about. Even in 2026, when new designs appear every year and trust is expected instantly, a track record like this still matters. If this gun was going to fail, it would have done so 20 years ago. For me, the HK USP isn't impressive, it's the standard everything else has to measure against. If you've ever spent time around duty pistols, you've seen this pattern before. The gun everyone argues about online, but the one that keeps showing up in real work. That's how the Sig P226 earned my trust. I didn't come to respect it because it was exciting. I respected it because I kept seeing it come back. From training days, back from long cycles of use, back into rotation after most pistols would have been sidelined. If you've ever watched the same gun get handled from shooter to shooter, day after day, you know how fast weak designs get exposed. I've seen P226s live their entire life in rotation, handed off, shot, holstered, and handed off again. Run one long enough and it starts telling you the truth. When something finally needs attention, it's never a surprise. Normal wear, springs, parts you expect, nothing sudden. The gun itself never turns into the problem. If you value consistency over flash, you understand why professionals stuck with it for so long. If volume was going to expose this gun, it already did, and it stayed. And the next pistol on this list proves reliability in a completely different way. Rental ranges don't lie. They expose weak gun designs faster than anything else. Loud lanes, dirty benches, pistols handed to shooter after shooter, rushed grips, limp wrists, and almost no thought given to maintenance. This is where flaws show up early, and every time I walk past those rental walls, the same thing stands out. The Glock 17 is still there. Not pretty, not babied. Worn smooth in all the right places. While other pistols rotate in and out with down for maintenance tags, the Glock just keeps getting handed back across the counter. Same mags, same routine, no ceremony. Seen it run like that all day. Strangers behind the trigger, zero sympathy, and yet it keeps cycling regardless. Feeding, firing, resetting. No drama, no surprises. That's a kind of reliability you don't debate online, you just notice it. In 2026, when more people are buying pistols they've never handled, this kind of track record still matters. When a gun survives that environment, reliability stops being a theory, it becomes obvious. And coming up next is a gun that survives a completely different kind of abuse, the kind that ruins most pistols. I'm gonna be honest, small guns usually make me nervous. Tight tolerances, lighter mass, less forgiveness. Historically, this is where reliability problems show up first. So when micro compacts started promising duty level performance, I expected cracks to appear early. With the Hellcat, that didn't happen. This gun lived the kind of life small pistols usually hate. Carried more than it was shot, in and out of holsters, heat, sweat, lint, quick range trips instead of clean planned sessions. The kind of use where maintenance gets pushed back and excuses start stacking up. And that's where small guns normally start acting up. The Hellcat, on the other hand, didn't. It fed, fired, and reset the same way every time it came out of the holster. No hesitation, no drama, no warning signs. And here's the important part. Reliability stayed separate from comfort. Yes, it may be small. Yes, it's snappy. And no, it doesn't shoot like a full-size pistol. But harder to shoot doesn't mean less dependable. The gun did its job every time, even when carry life wasn't perfect. Sweat, lint, heat, and inconsistent cleaning included. And that's why it earned a spot here. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's trustworthy. Small guns fail more often, this one didn't. Up to this point, every gun on this list survived because it was forgiving. This one survived because it wasn't. This pistol didn't come to the world quietly. The CZP-10C showed up with expectations stacked on top of it. Hype, comparisons, and a lot of people waiting for the first crack to appear. In 2026, that kind of pressure hasn't gone away. It's become the norm. At around 500 MSRP and commonly found closer to $400 to $450, nobody was giving it a free pass. At that price point, shooters expect corners to be cut somewhere. Reliability is usually the first thing everyone watches, and so it got watched. It didn't live a gentle life early on. It got shot hard, stripped down, put back together, and run again just to see if the hype would fold. One hiccup showed up along the way, the kind you can trace back to the shooter doing something stupid. After that, the pattern stayed boring. No repeat failures, no mystery problems, no slow unraveling. The hype didn't break it, it proved it. The next gun on this list earned trust without anyone paying attention at all. Some guns earn attention, others just get carried. The Max 9 lived in that second category. It didn't invite admiration, didn't ask to be tuned, didn't give you a reason to talk about it after a range trip. It just showed up where carry guns actually live, on the body, in the heat, through long days where sweat, lint, and movement do more damage than recoil ever will. That's usually where small pistols start slipping, but this one didn't. The grip wasn't generous, and recoil reminded you it was light, and that's exactly why the reliability mattered. Even when control took work, the mechanics stayed settled. Feed, cycle, reset, again. This was the point where I expected it to start acting up. It never did, and that bothered me more than if it had. There was a single stumble along the way, the kind that shows up when the shooter rushes, and it ended right there. No repeat, no warning signs, no slow unraveling afterward. In 2026, when more people are carrying every day but maintaining less than they think, that kind of reliability matters more than polish. Some pistols earn trust by being enjoyable, and others earn it by staying boring when life isn't. And that's where the Max 9 landed. This is one of those guns people trust right up until someone tells them they shouldn't. It didn't feel special, it didn't carry prestige, and it definitely didn't come with the kind of reputation that makes you slow down and pay attention. The TP9SF didn't earn trust by impressing early, it earned it by sticking around. It stayed in the mix, got used here and there, never babied, never closely watched, and that's when the real test started. Not a dramatic moment, just time doing what time always does. Weeks turned into months, nothing strange showed up. No pattern of failures, no creeping issues. It behaved the same way every time it came out. Predictable and settled. The kind of reliability you don't notice until you realize you've stopped thinking about the gun altogether. And that matters more now than it used to. Heading on into 2026, reliability often gets assumed instead of earned. Guns like this remind you that trust doesn't always arrive with hype. Not every reliable pistol earns confidence the same way. I heard about this gun across a pawn shop counter in West Texas. Bald guy, strong mouth, the kind of guy who doesn't waste words and doesn't forgive equipment. He sees what breaks for a living, what gets traded in after someone loses confidence, and his rule is simple. Carry guns don't get second chances. If it stumbles once, it's done. And that's the lens this pistol went through. Not optimism, not brand loyalty, just quiet watching, waiting for the mistake. Because in his world, fixed later doesn't matter. If it fails when it counts, it never gets carried again. The APX A1 carry didn't give him that moment. No repeat issues, no pattern, no behavior that made him pause. It just kept doing what it was supposed to do the same way every time. And that's what really matters at the end of the day. Not improvement stories, not explanations, just the absence of failure. Today, when carry guns are smaller, tighter, and less forgiving than ever, passing that kind of standard still means something. He finished his lecture, I laughed, and I walked out the store because it was time for the next test. A few days later, early December, the idea for this video finally clicked. So I did what I always do. I went to the range. Elm Fork Shooting Sports. Quiet morning, no plan other than to shoot and see what felt right. So I brought the Smith & Wesson M&P9 M2.0 Compact with me. Not dramatic, just another range day. I was a few magazines in when I heard my name. Steve? I turned around and saw an old friend walking up with a Glock 19 in his hand. No cameras, no prep, no arguments. We laughed, talked for a bit, and did what shooters do. We started shooting side by side. It wasn't a competition. There were no scoreboards, no brand wars, just two pistols, same day, same pace, same conditions. We pushed them a bit, traded magazines, ran drills we both trusted. Halfway through, I remember thinking to myself, I'm saving this beast for the 2026 test. Neither gun failed. No hiccups, no excuses, no drama. And that's what stuck with me. When reliability isn't real, it doesn't need defending, it just shows up even when the test wasn't planned. And that kind of quiet confirmation changes how you look at everything that follows. I didn't care about this gun when it first showed up. It felt unnecessary, like something that existed because it could, not because it needed to. Between the original 43 and everything else that followed, the 43X didn't look like it had a real job. That assumption didn't last. What changed wasn't excitement, it was behavior. The longer grip settled the gun down, the short slide stayed unpredictable, and even when expectations shifted and the role expanded, the mechanics did not. It just kept running the same way session after session without developing quirks or bad habits. That's where most carry pistols stumble, when you start asking more of them than originally intended. This one didn't push back. The heat didn't change it, the longer strings didn't change it, and once it proved it could handle responsibility without drama, it stopped feeling like a compromise and started feeling intentional. I didn't warm up to it emotionally, I stopped doubting it functionally, and that matters, and that really matters going forward. When a pistol can quietly grow into a larger role without falling apart on you, it earns consideration beyond the moment it was designed for. Some guns impress you right away, and others wait until you're thinking about what you'll still trust next year. This pistol didn't arrive quietly. From the moment it launched, the Walther PDP showed up under a microscope. Heavy hype, heavy attention, and a lot of people waiting to see how long it would take before something cracked. I watched that skepticism closely because modern designs don't get grace periods anymore. Nobody was asking how it shot on day one. The real question was how it would hold together once the volume showed up, and it did, faster than I expected. The PDP didn't get eased into use. I saw it run hard early across a lot of hands at a pace that usually exposes weak points quickly, but none of that happened here. Instead, the behavior stayed the same as use increased. No shift, no creeping issues, just mechanical calm session after session. That kind of reliability doesn't come from age, it comes from surviving pressure. That's why departments started paying attention. Agencies don't buy promises, they move when a platform proves it can handle sustained use without surprises. This one didn't have the time to be legendary, it forced it. And if you're thinking about what you're still going to trust going into 2026, this is what accelerated reliability actually looks like. There was a point where the question stopped being will this work and became how long can it keep doing this? That's a line most pistols never cross. I paid attention because the margin for error here was almost non-existent. A pistol this compact, carrying this much responsibility, usually shows you the compromise quickly. Small guns don't hide problems, they expose them, and this one never showed anything. What stood out wasn't really comfort or novelty, it was consistency. The behavior stayed the same as use piled up. No patterns forming, no weak links slowly becoming the story. When a gun fails, you hear about it. When millions of them fail, you can't hide it. The real pressure comes from scale. This platform spread everywhere, and when a design gets used that wildly, weak ones don't stay hidden for long. This one, on the other hand, held. Never filled doesn't mean untouched, it means surviving reality. And as we move through 2026, when micro carry isn't optional anymore but expected, reliability at this size stops being impressive, it becomes the baseline. And there's one more pistol left that defines that standard better than anything else we've covered in this list. I didn't go looking at the PSA Dagger Compact with confidence, and if you think this is about price or value, it's not. And that's exactly why the spot surprised me. Instead, the Dagger kept removing excuses. This was no controlled setup. Different shooters, different habits, a trigger that doesn't help you hide mistakes, and long enough sessions for heat to become part of the conversation. That's where pistols usually start changing behavior. Little things at first, then patterns. They never showed up. If this gun was inconsistent, it wouldn't be brave enough to put here. By the time the gun crossed 600 rounds, nothing had escalated. No creeping issues, no parts turning into the story, no moment where you stop and think something's starting. The gun stayed mechanically boring even when the shooting wasn't. Price may explain the doubt, but it doesn't excuse failure. Because in 2026, when more people are buying based on availability, value, and reality instead of brand loyalty, reliability doesn't get graded on expectations. It either holds up or it doesn't. This one did. And when a gun survives low expectations, bad inputs, and real use without blinking, that's not budget reliability, that's real reliability. This pistol doesn't rely on reputation or surprise. The FN509 Compact earns trust because it was designed with the assumption that it would be treated badly, rotated between users, run hard, and maintained when convenient, not when ideal. That intent shows up quickly. Nothing about it feels delicate. The gun doesn't ask for rhythm, doesn't reward care. The gun doesn't ask for rhythm, doesn't reward careful handling, and doesn't change behavior when conditions get sloppy. It just stays put. Feed, cycle, reset, over and over without developing quirks or even attitude. That's why it feels almost boring to some shooters. The weight, the stiffness, the lack of drama, all of that is intentional. It's not trying to impress you on a good day. It's built for the days when things aren't clean, calm, or even controlled. As 2026 approaches with more pistols chasing refinement and speed, there's still value in one engineered to survive more than most shooters will ever ask of it. I didn't watch the Wilson Combat SFX9 for dramatic failure. I watched it for drift because that's how tightly built guns usually get exposed. When tolerances are this precise, problems don't show up all at once, they creep in. Fit loosens, timing changes, small inconsistencies start stacking, and that's what I was paying attention to, but none of that ever happened. Through real use, the gun stayed settled, slight movement felt the same, lockup stayed honest, controls didn't soften or wonder. Nothing shifted into something you'd have to explain later, and when you run a pistol like this, that absence of change is the whole story. This isn't never filled because it's expensive, it's never filled because it was built correctly. As 2026 gets closer and refinement becomes easier to sell than durability, this kind of reliability still matters, especially if you expect a gun to hold its character over time. Some pistols survive chaos, this one survives precision. I think about that quiet shooter more often than I expected. Not because he was fast or flashy or running some high-end setup, oh no, but because he understood something most folks learn the hard way. A reliable pistol doesn't compete for attention, it just works. Year after year, condition after condition, without asking for applause. And as expectations keep rising in 2026, reliability like that stops being optional. Every handgun on this list earned its place the same way, not through hype, but through repetition, consistency, and the kind of quiet confidence that comes from long-term use. Some were built that way from the start, but others proved themselves over time, and a few outperformed guns that cost twice as much. So now I want to hear from shooters who've seen it firsthand. Which 9mm has never failed you? Which one stayed loyal through weather, years, and heavy rounds without a single complaint? Drop your story down in the comments. Thanks for riding along today. Stay sharp and stay safe. This is Steve, and I'll see you in the next one.